Dr. Ron, let me ask you about a shooting that just happened in New Orleans, actually. Former NFL player Joe McKnight was shot and killed. It was a white man who shot him. The police arrested the shooter. We actually have a picture of it, but released him 24 hours later. Yeah, you can see it on the screen right there. He's handcuffed, leaning against the wheel of a car. Yes. This seems awfully odd to me from a law enforcement perspective here. Is this typical procedure?
It can be, depending on the jurisdiction. And I have self-defense shooting cases in Louisiana. And as a matter of fact, this last Saturday, I have a firearms school and I teach self-defense and law. So what's going on here is that Mr. Gasser, who is the person that shot Mr. McKnight, made a representation that he was in fear of his life. And Louisiana state law, and there are several of the state laws, allow for the application of deadly force if the individual, especially one inside of a car, which is referred to as a special location. What are special locations? Vehicles, businesses, and residences believe that someone is imminently trying to enter that special place, and that person constitutes a reasonable threat of serious bodily injury. And that allows them to apply deadly force. Now, I know about the forensics to date on this. The bullet casings were found inside Mr. Gasser's car. The police have already dispelled some of the bad information and false narratives that were out there that Mr. Gasser was outside of the car and executed Mr. Knight. That's not what took place. We know that forensically. And I think what we're waiting and what the police are waiting to do is take a look at what the percipient witnesses to this event have to say. Now,
right.
Mr. Gasser's car, I'm just talking forensically. I'm not talking one side or the other. I don't do that. Mr. Gasser's car was in traffic. It was stopped in traffic. There were vehicles on three sides of his vehicle, actually all four sides of his vehicle. Mr. McKnight was on the passenger side. Mr. Gasser was blocked in from the front and from the rear. He could not get out of that situation. We do know that Mr. McKnight was out of his car. The passenger side, which would be the right side window, was rolled down. There was no glass fragments, to my knowledge, there at the scene. So, I mean, that's the argument right now, and that's going to be the determination. Did Mr. Gasser, all within the totality of circumstances, was it reasonable to believe that Mr. Knight was going to harm him? That's what the police are investigating. Until they get that, they really can't take him into custody because they don't have probable cause to do so.
Right, and I think that's what the question is, but you're right about, you use the correct word here, I think, and that's false narrative. We're already being told by the mainstream media outlets that this was a racially motivated issue, that the shooter was white, the victim was black, and that it was another senseless killing. And in fact, it was a senseless killing, but it seems as though, or we'll investigate to see whether or not it was something that was in self-defense here. But talk to me about this narrative, though, this false narrative. We know it's coming from the Black Lives Matter movement. Why are they so quick to want to defend someone who might have done something wrong? If Mr. McKnight was attacking Mr. Gasser, why would you defend that?
Well, here is the Black Lives Matter, situation. I've, written about it extensively in my book. The Black Lives Matter movement was founded on two cases that were full of false narratives. The first one, which is somewhat similar to the circumstances here, is Trayvon Martin and and George Zimmerman. Right? I mean, there were false narratives that Zimmerman stood over Martin and executed him on the ground. We found out that that was completely false, that Zimmerman chased after Martin. We found that was completely false. And so, Black Lives Matter, they look at things in terms of pure racial issues, and, they forward this type of thing. And of course, people that are uninformed or don't have the patience to wait for forensic evidence and statements, they carry that forward. That helps no one. I personally believe that this case is going to be the next Trayvon Martin case.
Right, and I guess we'll have to wait and see. I do appreciate you bringing the actual facts, the forensic evidence here, because we just saw it in Charlotte. The mobs, the Black Lives Matter protesters that turned into rioters, they vandalized, they destroyed the downtown area of Charlotte before they even knew the facts of the case, the facts that ended up showing that the police officer acted in a justified manner. Dr. Ron, as this case continues to unfold, I hope you'll come back and update us.
I certainly will, and thank you very much. And,